How's it going, everyone? It is I, Anime Outlet, and this is part 4 of What If Deku Had a Regeneration Quirk. And now, let's begin. Right after Izuku and Nezu shook hands, an alarm would sound as Nezu would look worriedly up at it, as the speakers would then turn on and would start to play a pre-recorded message. The UA campus is under attack. And this is not a drill. I repeat, the UA campus is under attack, and this is not a drill. As Nezu would then look through the window at All Might, as a police officer would barge through the door, and would then barge through the door into the interrogation room. This was one of the security guards on campus, who wasn't the best skilled as a hero, but could very easily be a security guard for the UA campus. As the security guard would then bust in and would say, "The USJ, sir, it's under attack." As Nezu would look over at All Might, as All Might would nod, as All Might would then jump over to Nezu, grab him, and would then start running to the nearest window, which was right outside of the room. So Izuku would follow them, as he would see All Might just jump out of the window and would start hopping towards the USJ. Not wanting to be left out, Izuku would follow them, thinking, well, if I'm a student, I might as well just follow them and see what they're doing, because they must be going to the classroom or something. Izuku wasn't that smart because he hadn't been in school, but he was a strategizer and he could very easily strategize things in a battle. He's not book smart, but he's just smart because of random and luck. That's pretty much it. So Izuku would end up following them, jumping out of the window and landing in a bush, as he would then start to run after the All Might silhouette that he saw barely just running into the distance, as Izuku would run that way. Conveniently, however, it was just a long straight road on the UA campus connecting all of the classrooms, dorms, and just all of the cities and testing sites that the UA school uses. So Izuku would just very easily be able to follow where they were going. As he would then see them stop. Thinking he was close, he would speed up, as he would see Nezu and All Might right outside of the USJ building, about to open the doors. As Nezu would look around, as he would see Izuku sprinting towards them, as Izuku would start sprinting up the stairs, skipping one stair at a time. Remember, he didn't want to be left out. As he would then make it up there, as Nezu would then yell at him, "What the hell do you think you're doing here?" Zuko would then just smile at Nezu, saying, "Well, I could have escaped, so you should just be happy that I'm still here." Nezu would nod, just agreeing with Izuku's statement, as All Might would then open the door to see complete chaos. Aizawa was getting his face smashed in by the Nomu, and 13 was on the ground looking like they were dead, as he would see a bunch of students fighting villains and just being knocked out or would look to be dead, as All Might would then jump down towards the Nomu, as he would then grab Aizawa and all of the students and 13 who was knocked out, handing them to Izuku and Nezu, as he would tell them to move the bodies out of the USJ so that they couldn't get hurt, which they would do, as Izuku would then run back into the building, which Nezu did not want Izuku to do, as Izuku would see All Might struggling with the Nomu. Now, since this universe, the regeneration quirk is very, very rare and valuable, and so All for One couldn't get his hands on a regeneration quirk. And the regeneration quirk also has a very lucky genetic ability to not be able to be stored, transferred, or passed on to. So it can't be passed on through genetics either. You just have to get a miracle in the quirk draw and somehow end up getting a quirk. So Izuku was just that lucky. And since this couldn't happen, All for One was able to give another strength quirk to the Nomu, making it a lot harder for All Might to beat the Nomu. It had a regeneration quirk and a pain resistance quirk in the anime, while now it has a pain resistance quirk and two very, very strong strength quirks. So it could very easily overpower All Might, as it would very easily, as it would just continue to rapidly punch All Might's stomach in its weak spot. Sure, it didn't know that its stomach was its weak spot. It was just very easy to hit, as All Might didn't guard it as well as he should have, thinking it was just going to be another one-punch knockout like most of his other fights were. So All Might would go in with this mentality. However, it wasn't the case. He would very easily get knocked out by the Nomu, as the students seeing this would think they were all going to die. This is All Might we're talking about, the number one hero who was just gone. He's looking like he's completely unconscious. He's going to get killed by this Nomu and the villains, and then they're going to go after them because they're UA students. They're the future heroes. So if they eliminate the future heroes, there's not going to be any other heroes that are going to defeat the villains the next generation. It's a very simple and easy way to get rid of the heroes that are going to stop them in the future. However, Izuku was there, as he would immediately jump into action with his sword in hand, would stab the Nomu right through its chest. Sure, the Nomu had a pain resistance quirk, but that wouldn't help against Izuku very easily slicing through it. His skin was not very rough or hard to pierce. It was something very easy and smooth that could very easily tear, like a plastic bag. So Izuku was very easily able to do this. And the reason his skin was because this way is because that was one of the drawbacks of having one of his quirks. The pain resistance quirk made it so you had very easily just terrible skin. So if someone walked up to it with nails, they could very easily just take a chunk of the skin off, which wouldn't very do well against either a bullet or a sword. So Izuku would have a very easy time slicing right through its stomach. However, the Nomu seeing this would turn around and would punch Izuku across the face, sending him flying into a fountain, smashing into it as Izuku would hit one of the pipes inside of it, as the bricks and concrete would fall down onto him, along with the water running down throughout his entire body and all of the rubble. As Izuku would then get through the bricks, as his neck would then start to crack back into place. The Nomu's punch was so hard it completely destroyed Izuku's neck to where it was basically just unrecognizable. There was bones sticking out of his skin. However, Izuku has had so much practice with regeneration that something like this was not a very major injury to him. Hell, it wasn't even an injury to him at all. It would very easily heal itself, as Izuku would then look back at the Nomu and would fly at it. However, Shigaraki was watching this fight closely. This kid somehow looked like he was going to beat the Nomu, who beat All Might, and this was just completely strange to Shigaraki. He also saw how Izuku's neck looked to heal itself, and this was surely something he would give back to All for One, hoping that All for One could possibly share intel on what his quirk might be and if it is worth stealing in the future. Remember, it can't be stolen. So Izuku would jump back into the fight with the Nomu, running with his sword in hand, as he would get to the Nomu, dodging under one of its fists, as it would then slice up, taking out the Nomu's left arm, as Izuku would then jump back, only to be met to a punch in the gut. The Nomu immediately jumped around and threw an uppercut at Izuku, which happened to hit his stomach area. So Izuku would then be thrown flying 100 meters back, as Izuku would look up at the Nomu, as Izuku would just flinch in pain. Remember, Izuku doesn't have a pain resistance quirk, it's only a regeneration quirk. He doesn't feel any of the pain of it healing, but he does feel the pain of it breaking and snapping. He just had enough practice to have a good pain tolerance. Sure, this isn't a quirk, so it's only down to a human scale level. So if his arm is just completely gone, it's going to feel like hell for him. Sure, he's already had something like that happen to him, so it's not going to feel as bad, but it's still going to feel like crap to him. So Izuku would jump back into it, not wanting to be punched again, hoping that he could just take this Nomu out once and for all. So Izuku would go for the arm, or the other arm that was left, hoping that the Nomu would just accept defeat after this. However, that wasn't the case. This Nomu is a mindless being who had one role: to kill All Might and then to kill all the students. That is just the command Shigaraki had given to him, and so he must act out that command. So he would run charging right at Izuku. However, Izuku would dodge under this, much like he had slid under to cut the Nomu's arm off. However, Izuku's sword would then go missing out of his hand. It would end up in the hands of the Nomu, who would then shatter the blade in its hand, as Izuku would look on completely shocked and then confused. He had had that blade for over 5 years, and it was now laying on the ground, and he had nothing to destroy this Nomu with. He was completely confused on what he should do next. Izuku, now realizing what had happened, would immediately jump into a blind rage. This was the sword and blade that he had gotten to show his triumph over the orphanage, to show that he finally conquered what he had not been able to do for 5 years, and now it was just gone, just completely destroyed. So Izuku, jumping into this blind rage, would run at blinding speeds right at the Nomu, grabbing a brick and tossing it right at this Nomu, as it would then stick itself right into the Nomu's brain, as the Nomu would fall backwards, completely void of life. It had died from Izuku's brick throw, as Izuku would then look on at the Nomu just in a complete glare. His blade was now destroyed, as he would look over at the blade and picking up the shards of it and would just crumble it into his hands. How could this blade be so weak, and yet he used it for so long? As Izuku would then fall out of this rage and would then just sit down on the ruins of the water fountain that he had destroyed from the punch he got from the Nomu, as Izuku would then just sit there to think about his thoughts. Moments later, police cars and ambulances would then arrive, going into the just building, taking all of the villains out, getting any of the students who were hurt just in an ambulance to go to Recovery Girl's office, as they would just do this very, very quickly, as crime scene investigators would come there, and crime scene cleaners would come there and start to clean up the mess, as Izuku would then get up and would start to follow Nezu back to the UA building, as Nezu would start to walk back there, which would be quite a while before he even got back to the building. And by the time he got back, it was dark, and Izuku not really having a place to go, because he knew they weren't going to let him go back to his house that was a 2-hour walk from there. UA was in a whole other city, as Izuku's city was, so it would have taken him around 2 to 3 hours to even get back to where he lived. We cut back to Nezu and Izuku walking, as Izuku would then sigh and say, "So, what now?" Nezu would just think, just wondering what he should do now. UA had gotten attacked for the first time by villains in its entire history, so he was completely confused on what he should do. So Nezu would then just smile at Izuku and would say, "Well, hopefully none of the villains go out and attack the students' homes or parents. So to avoid that, I'll decide to build dorms, which I'll get Cementos, I don't know what the name is or how to pronounce it. I'll get him to build dorm rooms. And since I also know you don't have a place to stay, you could live there too, since I'll be putting you in Class 1A. That's also because you gained my trust with what you did to save All Might and the rest of the students there back at the USJ. So just feel lucky you somehow have gained my trust. Not a lot of people can say that, especially somebody who's killed many people in acts of villainy." And that's where I'm going to leave it off, guys. I hope you guys did enjoy What If Deku Had a Regeneration Quirk Part 4. I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.